In a subgenre filled with hideous, gruesome monsters and aliens, sometimes the scariest thing about sci-fi horror is simply the vast unknowability of the cosmos. Sci-fi horror author H.P. Lovecraft tapped into this fear when he wrote about worlds and monsters beyond human comprehension. In turn, he pioneered a new kind of subgenre known as cosmic horror. The problem with stories about something too horrific to describe or comprehend is that it's difficult to translate these into film. But throughout the last century, many filmmakers have found entertaining and innovative ways to put cosmic horror on screen. In 1986, indie filmmaker Stuart Gordon adapted an H.P. Lovecraft short story called From Beyond, about a mad scientist who finds a window into another world. A decade later, director Paul Anderson made his own kind of cosmic horror with Event Horizon, about a crew who reach the outer limits of our solar system and lose all grip on reality.
Hell is only a word. The reality is much, much worse.
Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of alien horror as we venture into the cosmos and discuss From Beyond and Event Horizon. Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Munzer, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres one series at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 7th series exploring the evolution of alien, sci-fi, and cosmic horror, and this is part 18. This week's episode is sponsored by $20 Patreon subscriber Chris Newton, and in this week's episode, as that intro suggested, we're going to be discussing 2 cosmic classics. First of all, Stuart Gordon's From Beyond from 1986, and then Paul W.S. Anderson's Event Horizon from 1997. And both of these discussions will be spoilerific. Please go and give them a watch before listening to our discussions, because if you haven't seen them, then, oh my god, you are in for a treat. So joining me to discuss these 2 cosmic classics, I've got one of my very favourite people. She was last here on the main podcast discussing The Silence of the Lambs and Seven with me. That was a big meaty discussion. And she's back. Welcome to the podcast, Becky Darke. Hello.
Hello, Mike Munzer.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm excited. I'm excited to get cosmic with you tonight.
It's a delight to be here getting cosmic.
I know, I can't wait. Tell me first of all, a little bit about your thoughts about this subgenre, alien horror, sci-fi horror, cosmic horror, that kind of thing.
Love it. Yeah, big fan. Mm-hmm. Big fan. I think alien horror was probably one of the sort of subgenres that I got into earliest, I think, because it's sort of, a lot of them kind of cross-pollinate with sort of action and stuff as well. So you tend to get that whole, like, if they're in space, there's usually a bit of action thrown in. And that was very much like my household when I was a kid. Like, my mum was really into action films and stuff. So, anything that sort of had aliens in space, I was exposed to pretty early. And then that just sort of quite nicely like bled into my horror fascination. So yeah, I love scary aliens. I find them, I was thinking about this, like, it's weird that I find them scary, because like, it's fine being scared of like a psycho killer or something, because there's a fair possibility you could bump into one, whereas I'm never going to space. But
that was going to be my next question for you. Would you ever go into space?
I don't even go in the sea, Mike. I'm not going to fucking space. I think it's insane that people go to space, and so like, it's not like I'm ever going to encounter all this scary stuff, but it does it. Yeah, it shits me right up. It's scary up there.
It's fucking scary, isn't it? I don't know why. It's like Stevie said a couple of weeks ago on here. It's like, we're clearly not meant to go there, right?
Exactly.
But
Stevie and I have a similar thing about the sea, you see. So yeah, we get it.
Yeah. The sea is also terrifying, absolutely. And we are kind of like branching off slightly this week to talk about specifically, I suppose, cosmic horror. And the two movies we're talking about, I guess they don't really have traditional aliens in them in that regard, but they're certainly kind of more cosmic. And maybe we should start off by talking a little bit about that, about Lovecraft and Lovecraftian horror. How sort of familiar are you with that term, sort of Lovecraftian horror?
Yeah, relatively. I'm quite a fan of Lovecraft. His stories. I've got a couple of sort of compendiums.
You've got a lovely book, haven't you?
I've got a couple of beautiful editions. Sweet a dish. So yeah, I mean, I am known to curl up in bed with an H.P. Lovecraft weird tale. And I mean, you're right. It's not traditional aliens, I guess, but it's this idea of parallel universes, sort of distant worlds, deep space, like deep time, this kind of like unknowable aspect. And, you know, I mean, really, that's kind of fine. It's not like Little Green Men aliens, but it's kind of alien in its purest form, really, like this kind of unknowable horror, this stuff that is just so different to us, and that really kind of underpins so much of what like Lovecraftian horror is and cosmic horror is, this idea that it's something so unknowable that like the human brain just can't even comprehend it, and so will often just pop, right? So it's like it's blown my tiny little mind, like this whole thing of kind of going mad because you've seen something that is just so beyond. And like, the two films that we're going to talk about today are like, they embody that idea so brilliantly. This idea of just like, I can't fathom what this is. I can't get my head around it. And so it's like blown my brain. Yeah,
I love that. And it goes right to the edge of sci-fi, and almost then it feels like Lovecraft is almost where sci-fi crosses over into sort of occult or magic or supernatural or something, right? As well, which is really interesting, I think.
100%. Like there's sort of mysticism within it, and like also, I mean, I think I've heard you talk about this on a couple of the earlier Alien episodes. This idea of it almost sort of crossing over into like folk horror. These like cults, especially sort of within like the Cthulhu mythos. There are these like these cults of kind of worshippers of these old gods, and if you sort of stumble across that, you're fucked, I find that really compelling as well, this idea of these sort of underground goings on. So it's not even necessarily the alien threat, it's also like the human threat of kind of who's involved in it. And that's why Pretorius, in Pistorius. No, he's the murderer guy. Not him. Not him. He doesn't show up. That's why Pretorius is like, such a villain in From Beyond when we come to talk to that, is like, because he's the, and we're in Event Horizon as well. They're the kind of human connection to this like horrible stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like in these films and these stories, the main characters or the anti-heroes are ones that want to know too much, right? It's like your own, it's like a hubris thing, I suppose. It's kind of similar to something like Frankenstein, where it's like, if you mess with laws of God and physics, you suffer the consequences almost. And both these stories are about these men who basically lose it, right? Because they're looking for more stimulation, for more knowledge, for more answers and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. This very much this idea of kind of curiosity killed the cat. And, with both these films, there's a certain sort of eroticism to them.
Yes.
And they're not too dissimilar from like the original couple of Hellraisers in that way, because again, with Hellraiser, that is Frank sort of wanting to push it beyond like the kind of earthly delights aren't satisfying him anymore. And so he has to push it beyond. And that's why he kind of calls the Cenobites and gets really fucked up. And it's kind of the same with this, it's Pretorius wanting more, having to see more, and the same with Weir as well. And this idea of like the edge of our universe still isn't far enough. We have to like push it beyond, and then you do that, and obviously you uncover some stuff that's going to really. It's going to screw with you.
It's true. I was thinking Hellraiser 2 with both these movies. It's that, well, at least what the first one achieved well, is that idea of like, yes, you're wanting something beyond your grasp. And there is that feeling of like in Hellraiser is like, you can't really see what it is that it's almost unknowable and unfathomable exactly what this whole thing is that they go for, this pain and pleasure and hell and heaven and all of that stuff. And obviously the thing that people say a lot about quote unquote Lovecraftian horror and Lovecraft adaptations is that they're often labelled unfilmable because they're all about something that is indescribable or incomprehensible. So it's like, how do you put that on screen? I mean, I don't know. We'll talk about that obviously when we talk about these films, but do you sort of agree with that fundamentally these stories by Lovecraft are kind of unfilmable?
No, I don't, because we've seen really good adaptations of them. So no.
Yeah.
And I think the trouble with that argument is, because Lovecraft, in terms of actually being like a writer, like a master of his craft, sometimes comes under quite a lot of scrutiny and criticism about actually like some of his stories aren't very well written. They're amazing stories, but he does get criticised for being a bit ham-fisted and using like too much repetition and being clunky and being a bit vague, and that he kind of used this idea of something being indescribable to just not bother, which is, it's a perfectly valid criticism against him, but I think it oversimplifies in some cases kind of what he does with that device, and he does so beautifully create this idea of something that is unknowable without having to describe it in this sort of minute detail to try and get it across to the reader. Like, it's the classic horror tactic of leave stuff up to people's imagination, and they're always going to fill in the gaps with stuff that is way worse than you could come up with yourself. And he's a real master of that. And I think, in terms of adapting that for the screen, actually what it does is it leaves quite a lot up to the filmmaker to interpret and kind of fill those gaps in themselves. And I think that, when you do have successful Lovecraft adaptations, it's when you've got filmmakers who really kind of like understand what he was trying to do, and can kind of, they've got the imagination that they can bring a bit of themselves and a bit of their sort of own vision to their films. I mean, I think that his stuff is filmable, and I think that, even stuff that isn't directly based on his stuff but is just heavily influenced, something like Event Horizon, say what you like about Paul Anderson, he is, he's got a real vision, and he definitely does with that film. And, we'll talk about it later, but he's somebody who really took the sort of cosmic horror idea and put it on screen in a really effective way. So
yeah, I completely agree. And there are different ways that people can do that kind of Lovecraftian and how they put it on screen. One that we're going to be talking about in a few weeks is Benson and Moorhead's The Endless, right?
Incredible.
Which is an amazing example, like you talked about, that it more plays on the kind of UFO cult almost than it does the actual monsters. You barely get a glimpse of the monsters, but the way they portray them in that is so clever, I think, with very little money and that kind of thing. It's great.
I love it just to quickly shout them out, like cosmic horror wise, like they are just on another fucking level. Like they are so phenomenal. Good. I love everything that they do.
Yeah. Their films kind of make my brain explode in the way that cosmic horror should.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Okay, well, let's get into it, shall we? Let's begin with our first discussion, which is Stuart Gordon and Brian Usner's 1986 film, From Beyond.
Every journey begins in the mind. A flight of imagination. A vision of what might lie across the universe. Or within the deepest regions of the subconscious. Dr. Edward Pretorius is about to embark on such a journey.
It's out of control. You've got to turn it off.
Something's coming.
Humans are such easy prey.
From the makers of Reanimator, from beyond.
Crawford Tillinghast is accused of the murder of his friend, mentor and sex pest, Dr. Edward Pretorius, who was found in his attic laboratory dead and headless. But Crawford maintains it was a groundbreaking experiment that resulted in Pretorius's death, and that he'd simply destroyed the machine that let otherworldly monsters through to kill him. Enter Dr. Catherine McMichaels, a young and gifted psychiatrist who believes in getting to the bottom of disturbed patients' trauma rather than simply locking them up. Along with Sergeant Bubba Brownlee, she takes Crawford back to the scene of the crime to restage the experiment and get some answers. But Pretorius, now hornier than ever, is waiting for them, and things don't end well.
Yes. Incredible. So, Becky, first of all, let me ask you, what do you think of From Beyond?
It's a fucking classic. It's amazing.
What a banger. Oh,
what a film, Mike. I think this is so funny as well because you know, you're putting aliens together. Brilliant. You send me the list. I think I probably even said to you before you sent me the list, please, can I do Event Horizon? You were
absolutely.
Like, yes. I was like, thank you. And then after we'd agreed that, you texted me not long after, would you be up for pairing it with From Beyond? And basically all my dreams came true at once. I was like, fuck yeah.
You had gone beyond your pleasure threshold by this point.
Way beyond.
Yeah.
Right out the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a film. I mean, I'm a huge Stuart Gordon fan. I'm a huge Brian Usner fan. You know, they are such a dream team. I love their style of stuff. And this, I mean, it just, you know, it's kind of coming back to what I was saying earlier, like they get what Lovecraft was trying to do on the page. And I think they do so successfully this job of putting it on screen.
Yeah. Agreed. I feel exactly the same way as you. I love this. I love everything Stuart Gordon does. I've talked before on this podcast with Stevie about Reanimator. Of course, me and you have been on Brain Rot talking about Dolls together, haven't we? Stuart Gordon's Dolls. I love Brian Usner too. Society, obviously, Return of the Living Dead 3. Everything he does is great. But I think this, for me, is the best. It's my favourite, I think, of all of the Usner, Gordon, you know, world, universe. It feels like the kind of perfect example of everything they're both brilliant at, I think. You know, like the visuals, the performances, the mad performances in this. Like, it's so funny, it's so extreme, it's so weird.
It's so disgusting.
It's so disgusting.
Honestly, I'd sort of forgot, like I remembered it really clearly, but my brain had obviously done some sort of spring cleaning and got rid of a lot of the like goo because
it's got the Society goo, hasn't it?
But like I think it might be worse than Society. Like I kept like exclaiming out loud, like, oh, you know, just kind of like, oh, that's disgusting.
But it's also kind of sexy too.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's something like, I mean, we'll get into Barbara Crampton and everything as well. But right, like it basically ticks every box. This film, I think it's so much fun. It kind of zips along from beginning to end, and it's got loads of really cool ideas about it as well. Yeah. And yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just before we like get into the detail, the other thing that I really love about it is it's beautifully simple. Like, it like just tells its story just very simply, just in a very sort of linear way. Everything that happens just kind of drives the plot forwards. There's no fat on it at all. And it's just, there's no faff. It's just everything that's on screen is like good stuff that is just, you know, adding to the story, and that's it. It's amazing. It's really like simple and beautifully done.
I agree. I think that's what Stuart Gordon is so good at, actually. He does these kind of like get in, get out films, right? That's just like, it's like when we talked about Dolls, where it's like, this car breaks down in the thunder and lightning. They go stay at this mansion, and that's it. And it's like all systems go, right? And I love that about his movies. And yeah, and the story is kind of simple. It's based on a H.P. Lovecraft story, of course, and the story is very short, right? It's one of his very short stories. So I guess there was a very simple kind of narrative that they had to work with.
Well, so the story itself is like 7 pages long. It's really, really short. And actually, what they kind of got from the film is essentially the kind of opening scenes with so in the story it's actually like Jeffrey Coombs' character, who is the kind of evil doctor in it, and he gets his kind of, I guess, like professional rival round to show him what happens beyond. And he turns up, he shows him the machine. He's like, oh, where are all of your servants? And the mad doctor tells him like, oh, well, they've left. And then it turns out that they haven't left. He turned on his machine, and this sort of thing from beyond came and basically like ate them up. And then he turns it on, the thing comes, it goes to eat our kind of narrator, and he shoots the machine and like breaks it and like kills the guy, I believe. So that kind of sort of in its bare bones happens at the beginning of the film. Yes. Everything after that, really, Stuart Gordon sort of came up with. They were like, okay, well, we're actually going to have to like come up with more story. And so they sort of borrowed bits from other Lovecraft stories, and they kind of injected this this sort of slightly more like psychosexual part of it, with the pineal gland kind of being responsible for like sexual desire, and then they sort of built the film sort of from there. So yeah, I mean, the Lovecraft story is really short, and really like it's not like they've like spun that out over 90 minutes. They kind of used it and then came up with just their own stuff for the rest of the film. Yeah, I love that about it. And maybe we should start by talking about that opening scene, because it really feels like it sets its stall so well, doesn't it? The opening scene where we've got Jeffrey Coombs, we've got that monster kind of attacking his face, we've got the old lady with the dog coming in. Like, it's just like utter chaos, right? The pink lights, the creatures. It's an amazing kind of like opening of kind of here's what you're in for, right? That opening scene. Yeah, 100%. And he's like in that room, it's like the attic lab, right? And so what is this, 86? And so the computers are enormous, and they like cover like all of the walls, and then you've got the kind of resonator itself in the middle, and as you say, this sort of pink and like purple light. And like, if I ever think about sort of Lovecraft or sort of cosmic horror, it is this, like, people nowadays call it bisexual lighting, but essentially it's like cosmic horror lighting, right? It's like sort of purples. And so Gordon got this idea from Lovecraft, this idea of like ultraviolet light, and he sort of took that sort of literally and was like, well, we'll just use violet light. And so that's why you get that sort of that beautiful sort of that like sort of purpley tinge, like whenever they sort of see beyond, and obviously like a bit of wind machine and stuff to make it look like this. It's so good. What do you think of the way that this is set up then? That the idea is this machine, right? The resonator kind of taps into something in your brain, right? Your pineal gland, through vibrations and whatever else, that makes you able to see other worlds, essentially. And the point is that there are other worlds that kind of exist almost sort of on top of ours, right? And none of us, and we can't see these other creatures and they can't see us, but this machine is kind of opening the doorway, right? It's something that like a lot of Buffy storylines have, isn't it? Like tearing the walls between dimensions and everything. Right? And like Star Trek as well, like they're always sort of like bumping up against, other sort of versions of themselves and, other timelines and stuff. So I mean, it does it really effectively, this idea that they sort of say it a couple of times, that these things, these sort of monsters, for want of a better word, are around us all the time. But we, with our human consciousness and our sort of 5 limited senses, we don't know they're there. And that the like pineal gland is kind of like a sixth sense.
Yeah.
So once you, as you say, once you start like vibrating it and it sort of wakes up, you can sort of see and encounter this stuff that's around us all the time. But obviously the downside of that is it's a two-way door, so they can also see you, and they're a bit antsy. They
bit antsy.
yeah.
These kind of like sort of fish aliens, aren't they? Again, it's that kind of weird connection between sort of alien worlds and underwater worlds. This is something that crops up all the time with alien designs and creatures. They often look like the things you get at the bottom of the ocean, don't they? But like they're all kind of swimming about in this attic lab, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like eels and like
Yeah.
jellyfish and stuff. And then they sort of like latch onto people. Like, yeah, it's properly disgusting.
Horrible. And I really hate this idea as well, which we'll talk about as we go, of this pineal gland kind of growing in your head. And
It's
the way
very
that it kind of...
Cronenberg, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, this is the other thing, isn't it? And this is easily a film I could have talked about in the body horror series, really, because the body horror in this, like you say, is gross. And the thing that gets me the most for some reason is that Cronenbergian element of that kind of very phallic-shaped gland slowly kind of penetrating his forehead and coming out of his brain. That's a horrible thing. And I hate the little orifice, the little hole where it pokes out. That's so like rabid or something, isn't it?
It's exactly like rabid.
Yeah.
Except obviously hers is in her armpit. But
Yes.
it's essentially, it's like male and female, isn't it? Because it's like it comes out of a little vagina.
Yeah.
But it's like a sort of wiggly penis.
Yes.
And it's like...
How Cronenberg can you get?
It's the way it like moves around as well. Like it's kind of like, I don't know, like it's like sniffing stuff out. Like it's got a mind of its own. It's so disgusting. And there's the bit later where it's a bit more towards the end where they've got him in the hospital and the doctor is trying to kind of grab at it with like little forceps, and it sort of comes out a little bit and then like pops back in and then like comes out fully. It's like, ugh, it's so grim.
And again, not to skip too far ahead, but when it goes for Barbara Crampton and then she like bites it in her teeth, it's so disgusting.
I can like feel that like between my teeth when she does it. Like it's like, oh, like sort of, I don't know, when you're eating meat and it's got like gristle in it or something, like just, it's so disgusting. And then she's got like blood all around her mouth.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. I'll start off by asking you about some of this cast actually as well. You know, this is a kind of regular Stuart Gordon cast, right? I mean, obviously we'd already had Reanimator at this point, but Jeffrey Coombs, what an interesting actor in such interesting projects, right? But what do you think of him in this?
I mean, he's spectacular, as he always is. Like, I love him so much. And I think Stuart Gordon sort of describes him as like being a real chameleon as an actor. You know, he can just do anything. And in this, he like, you know, a little bit like in Reanimator, he's a bit scenery chewy, like, but it's just, it's to the perfect level. I'm not laughing at his performance. I'm like, he's got this real skill about just being so kind of over the top, but never like losing the audience, or certainly like I never find that his performance in any way brings me out of the story. Like he just draws me further and further in, and he's so amazing in this. And he's much more, because he and Barbara Crampton almost like swap roles in this as they do as they were in Reanimator. In that, she's very much the kind of the victim, sort of on the outside, and he's very much sort of, you know, driving the story and making the decisions, and he's in control. And in this, that's flipped, and I think, you know, he does that really well. That sort of that he's sort of under the control of this woman and Bubba as well. You know, he's sort of in their like care, in their custody. And he's also sort of second fiddle to Pretorius, who is this, you know, just, he's kind of all ego and just, you know, just like absolutely raging the whole time. And then you have sort of Coombs, who is, you know, larger than life, but even against kind of the other characters around him, like he's much more sort of victimized, I guess, in it, which is really interesting.
Yeah. because he basically is the villain in Reanimator, right? Herbert West. He is this mad doctor, much more sinister. And this one, he's much more vulnerable, slightly more sympathetic, isn't he, in a way? Even though he does go to some dark places towards the end. But Pretorius in comparison, far more kind of scary and sinister. And again, quite an over-the-top performance, right, from Ted Sorrell, but like brilliant, kind of fits the film, fits the world of this film, I think.
Oh, 100%. And for him to be this kind of this real big bad, they build that up like so much, you know, when they like find his bedroom and it's just, you know, it's like this BDSM paradise, but he's using it. Like they talk about him using it in like this really kind of dark and violent way. And, you know, just through a couple of things that they say, like, again, with like Jeffrey Coombs being like, I would just lie there and listen to them screaming, you know, and you're just like, fucking hell. Like, it's not just that this guy has opened a portal to the world that's rubbing up against ours and now, you know, he's let this thing through. Even just in his personal life, he was like this absolute monster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a real weirdo. I love it. And then so after that opening scene, we then go to meet Barbara Crampton's character, Dr. Catherine McMichaels, who when we first meet her, literally very buttoned up, right? Very kind of beige, academic looking, very beige, very sensible, big glasses, hair tied back and everything. And of course that changes brilliantly as the film goes on. But like you say, compared to her role in Reanimator, which was relatively small, this felt like such an amazing vehicle for Barbara Crampton. I mean, I think it is one of the movies that kind of made her this horror icon, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And apparently it was really kind of, it was a conscious decision to give her a much more meaty role where she had so much more to do. And she was much more in control, really kind of drove it a lot more. And apparently from the studio, there was some doubts about casting her because she was so young. And they were like, you know, this is the character is supposed to be a renowned psychiatrist, and you know she's too young to have kind of like even like literally done the school years to kind of get to this sort of stage. And apparently that's where this idea of her being like a girl wonder came from, because the other doctor, Dr. Block, like calls her sort of girl wonder like really disparagingly at one point, and that's kind of where this came from, that she's almost meant to be like a bit of a prodigy. And apparently with her being so buttoned up, that was literally them just like trying to establish the character at the start as her beige very like mature. And so like costumes and makeup were like, right, get her in a bun, get her in some great big glasses, get her in some beige, make sure she's got shoulder pads. Literally zero skin showing. Can we give her a balaclava? No, because then we can't see the bun. Okay, fine. Like, and then obviously, you know, that sort of peels away, as it were, as the film goes on. But apparently she loved that. She was like, you know, she loved being in the leather. She, you know, as a in sort of private, you know, she sort of talks about that in private. She isn't somebody who has a lot of kind of hang-ups or, you know, like, she's not a prude, you know, this is stuff that she said about herself. And apparently with the leather get-up, she was just like, yeah, let's go for it. Like, when else am I going to be able to do this? So she absolutely like relished it.
She clearly knew how phenomenal she looked.
Wow.
Right? But yeah, no, when I interviewed her when we did Reanimator on the podcast, and she talked about working with Stuart Gordon, Brian Usner, Jeffrey Coombs. She said that they were it felt like the closest thing to being part of this kind of repertoire, and that she felt so safe and comfortable working with all of these apparently like really lovely people all around. And I think that also gave her that confidence and, you know, that will, I suppose, to do some of the stuff and go to the places she goes to in movies like this, you know.
But apparently those were like her favourite scenes to film. Like, she just had so much fun. I love it.
I love that.
What a legend.
And she's an interesting character, right? Because when it starts off, you were introduced to that really horrible kind of portrayal of, like a mental institution, like the classic kind of really, really terrible, old-fashioned horror movie style kind of quote-unquote insane asylum, right? And she seems a little bit more understanding. She's got kind of different methods. She doesn't just want to lock them away, obviously. But then there are, like this other character of Dr. Block kind of keeps mentioning, you're sort of treating these patients for your own ends, for your own experiments, for your own career, and all of this kind of thing. And there is an interesting kind of morality with her character, isn't there? Like, actually, is she that good a person, or does she just want to use Jeffrey Coombs' character in this movie, basically, for her own study or whatever?
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because you do get this idea of her being ambitious, but also she tells that story at one point about her father who had, I think she says it's Alzheimer's, and how they tried everything to treat him, and they did electric shock therapy, which obviously then returns later when they tried to give it to her. And they even did surgery, and, there was no curing him. And so I actually like that she has this sort of other agenda, because it isn't just a one-dimensional, she's a over-ambitious woman in the medical field, and so she'll trample over anyone to get to where she needs to be. It's like actually there's you learn a bit more about her as a person and her history, and that she does have this kind of personal sort of connection, I guess, to also wanting to find, if stimulating the pineal gland is going to lead to kind of clinical treatments for dementia and things. So it's really interesting.
Really interesting. So then the action basically moves to the house for pretty much the rest of the film, right? As she kind of hauls up with Jeffrey Coombs, and then also we get Bubba played by Ken Foree, right? What do we think of him? Again, another kind of horror icon. In a way. Yeah. Just
he's so good in this.
So good.
So cool and kind. You get right from the start. He's not just there as the muscle. He's charming and funny, and he makes them food. That fucking stew and dumplings or whatever he makes looks fit.
It really does. And he looks so pleased with it.
He looks so pleased with himself when he takes a whiff of the saucepan. It's come round to my house and make me stew and dumplings, please.
Please. And also, he's the kind of grounded one. You need him, don't you? You need that one character that is hold on, what the fuck is going on now? Because the other three in this house, if we include Pretorius, they're all mad doctors, basically, right? They're all quite mad in their own way. And so you really need that character of Bubba in the middle of it, I think, to kind of be us in a way, right? And be what the fuck is going on here,
100%. And he's so good at that. Plus, at one point, he runs around in orange, very, very tight briefs, and then goes and plunges into some water. And Mike...
Oh, my God.
I mean, it's unbelievable. See everything. It's unbelievable. What a sexy film.
Between him in his Speedo and Barbara in her leather,
honestly,
this is an incredible film.
So good. So good. It's good. I'm so happy to be talking to you about it.
I know. I know.
But then, with her in the leather, when she's really coming onto him so strongly in the bedroom, and he's I just love it so much where he sort of says to her, come on, get some clothes on, we're getting out of here, leaves her to it. And her idea of getting some clothes on is putting on this bondage gear. Strong, big fan. And then obviously he comes back in, and she is kind of, taken over with this pineal lust or whatever it is. And again, then he's he sort of doesn't let it take over him, and he sort of, snaps her out of it and stuff.
Exactly.
So he's just a good guy, and sadly sadly we lose him.
Sadly, he doesn't last too long. But it's true. He's brilliant. I love the house as well. And I love, I was thinking about this because we've talked so much about on this series so far, particularly of films in the 80s, feeling like they really hark back to horror of the 50s, kind of sci-fi horror and alien invasion. Yeah. Where I feel like this film, and actually Event Horizon 2, feel more like they're harking back to kind of Universal horror or 30s horror. There's something more gothic about them.
100%.
Yeah, and Stuart Gordon, I guess this is the case in a lot of his films, Reanimator, also Dolls, that idea of like an old dark house, thunder and lightning, and it really kind of goes for it with kind of classic horror tropes, I think, doesn't it, as well, which I kind of love,
And it's the same house as from Dolls.
Right, that makes sense, yeah.
So after Reanimator was such a success, he basically got a 3-picture deal, but part of the deal was that they had to film all 3 pictures in Rome, and so they flew out and did Dolls, and then like broke it down after Dolls and redressed it, and then filmed From Beyond. So yeah, it's the same, which I love.
I love that. It's a really cool house, and
it's
it really does.
Good.
It really does play on those tropes where it's got the creepy attic with the monster
and then
inside
like the damp cellar, and I mean like the even as you sort of pull up outside of it, and you mentioned earlier the neighbour with the dog, and it's a little bit sort of Burbs, with like she's kind of calling the police because there's like flashing lights and weird noises and like obviously kind of weird science going on. Like, love it.
I love it. And I love that 80s weird science is always just like flashy, colourful lights. It's so good. Oh, yeah. So good. So then, what do you think of the way that this kind of the characters then start to shift and change, don't they? It's almost, and again, this is something we can cover with Event Horizon, it's almost like they start to become possessed or something. Barbara Crampton starts to have this kind of what feels like a kind of sexual awakening almost, like due to this machine, right? And even Ken Foree, it doesn't he mention after the first time they turn it on, he's like, I got a hard on from it. What's that about?
Explain that, doctor. You know?
I love it, and I love that she looked kind of taken aback by that. But it's having this kind of sexual effect on everyone, isn't it, in the house, which is a really interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think they do explain it as this idea of this like pineal gland. The machine like makes it grow kind of up through the brain, and it's the gland that. What the kind of main idea is that it sort of opens like your third eye or whatever. But also apparently it's the gland that controls like sexual desire. So they all just get really horny.
I love it. It's so good. And it's such a Hellraiser thing, isn't it? This idea that for Pretorius, 5 senses wasn't enough. Like he needed more, he craved more. And
exactly.
And then could be something straight out of Clive Barker, couldn't it? I think?
Without a doubt. And, once he's sort of taken over and goes, beyond, Barbara Crampton's character, Dr. McMichael, the names in this are hilarious. She sort of almost like steps into those shoes. So, when they first turn it on, and she sort of grabs onto Jeffrey Coombs' elbow, and he sort of feels it, and then they sort of just like make quite sort of like hot eye contact for a while. And then after that, it's really her that becomes the one who needs more. And Bubba even says to her at one point, like, I've seen this behavior before, but not in science experiments. Like I've seen it, down Skid Row or whatever, you're behaving like a junkie. And this idea that she is, now like addicted to this feeling, or addicted to the idea of what else like there is, that it's like it awakens this kind of insatiable desire that you always need to like have more of it.
It's so good. Let's talk about the kind of appearances and manifestations of Pretorius as well, because what amazing. This is where it goes kind of very society.
Very society.
In the way he looks, his kind of weird deformities, his like kind of big sort of cyst thing on the side of his head, and there's lots of drippiness, and he's very deliberately kind of handsy and pervy, isn't he, as well, every time he appears.
He's so gross. That bit where he like it's just because you said handsy. That bit where he like basically sexually assaults her, like rips off her bra, rips off her pants, and then he sort of like makes his fingers grow, and you're like, why? What are you going to do with those? Like, it's bad enough, whatever you're going to do while your fingers are normal size. Like, what the fuck? Why are you go gadgeting them? There is no need for this right now.
No, they're becoming these kind of like penis tentacle fingers, right? It's like we're watching some sort of like Lovecraftian hentai or something.
I was just about to say hentai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing that we both went there.
We both went there, but a little bit more gross than hentai.
Oh,
but it's
grim.
It is.
And you're right. Like he does go through these stages, but his like final stage, or no, maybe not final stage, definitely one of the later ones is he's just a big penis, isn't he? He's just like, just a big neck with a face on it, and then like an extra little penis coming out of his head. It's like the alien. It's like the alien and then the little mouth. He's got like, he's a big penis and then he's got an extra little penis coming out of his head. It's grim.
Yes. I know. What is it with aliens all looking like penises?
Mate. It's just... Yeah, I mean, it's just penises and vaginas all over the place.
All over the shop. And also, when I think it's the first time we see him when he's got that big sort of growth on his head. I got slight basket case vibes from that.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much
I was thinking of basket case and his little wandering hands in the bed, you know. Yeah.
So apparently they'd seen The Thing and this idea of these like really sort of otherworldly creatures, and Stuart Gordon in one of the extras on the Blu-ray that I watched, he's talking about the like special effects guys and saying like, obviously at the time, like that was when this was just like animatronics and all of the kind of special effects makeup and everything was just in its absolute heyday. And he was like, on every film they were just each trying to outdo each other. So we saw The Thing, and like, you know, he wasn't saying like we were trying to outdo The Thing, but it was this idea that it was like spurring them on, that they'd like
what else
seen,
could we do?
that they'd seen this thing that literally they were like, oh, right, okay, so what can we do with that? And you know, again, I mean, I would argue that in certain aspects, The Thing is a brilliant cosmic horror, and
definitely,
you know, so that idea of like these beings from another world just being so alien. I mean, you know, we said at the top of the chat that this isn't really a film about aliens. It's about stuff from like it's not from another planet, it's from another dimension. But the reason they're so disgusting to us, I think, is because they're just so like different and otherworldly, and like, and also they're really, really slimy.
Really slimy. It's all the liquid, it's the wetness, isn't it, I think? But yeah, you're right. And they're not as scary necessarily as something like a face hugger, right? Because it's it's less familiar in a way, isn't it? And I think in some ways that makes it less scary, but kind of amazing to look at the same time. Like, I was going to ask you, you know, how you think the practical effects hold up and everything. You know, they are still amazing, aren't they?
Amazing.
Right? But I think what helps even more is that they are not really going for anything rooted in reality either.
Exactly.
So it's not even like they could look dated, because it feels like Stuart Gordon body horror is not like David Cronenberg body horror. It's more outlandish. It's more cartoony almost,
fantastical.
I suppose.
Like,
Yes.
No,
yeah.
I completely agree. And oh my goodness, talking about his sort of different forms, there's the one, like really his sort of final form where he becomes that beast, which is like, what is it, like an insect? It's a bit like Brundlefly. It's a bit like his head's a bit like the fly, but then he's got that kind of insectoid sort of back, which it's like sort of ridged, and then obviously it's got wings and stuff. And I mean, that in From Beyond the film, that is what really reminds me, like when I'm reading Lovecraft, that creature that he turns into at the end, the sort of insect thing, is what really reminds me of the feeling that I get when I'm reading about the monsters, you know, that like, it's so hideous And I mean, I
hideous.
hate insects when they're
Me
normal
too.
size, let alone when they're huge. But
Yeah.
I think that specific design just really kind of, for me, like really captured on screen, what Lovecraft tries to sort of conjure up, I guess, with these animals, these creatures in his books. And apparently the idea around Pretorius kind of going through all of these stages is from one of the creatures in the Lovecraft story, At the Mouth of Madness. No, Mountains of Madness. Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, it's called like the Shoggoth or something like that. But it's this like shape-shifting creature, so it's this idea that it takes on all of these different forms, and when they sort of realized that they were going to need more material beyond the original just like 7-page From Beyond story, they were like, right, well, let's nick some other monsters, and it was like the Shoggoth that they took from At the Mountains of Madness that they sort of based him on. So
I love it.
I love
it's
it.
So great. It's so great. And I think what I love as well about this this is something that me and Stevie talked about when we discussed Life Force. As much as Life Force was a hell of a lot of fun, I like that this film is so contained. It's almost like a little chamber piece, right? And like we've already talked about, these kind of central 4 characters are so good. And that it's a film that, even though it's dealing with big ideas and quite a lot of spectacle, it's all contained just... and there's a kind of human story between these 4 characters just in this one house too, right? Which is kind of what I love most about it, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And certainly between... Dr. McMichaels, I find their names so difficult to remember because they're all a bit weird. So basically, Barbara Crampton's character, Jeffrey Coombs' character, and Bubba. So they actually form this really lovely bond. And so when Bubba dies, when he gets basically eaten alive by all those hideous little bugs, and he's left as being just kind of a skeleton and a head. She screams his name, and it really kind of it's like she really gives a shit. She's absolutely devastated that he's just died in front of her. And her and Jeffrey Coombs' character have this real kind of Crawford. They have this real bond. And how much of that is I don't know, kind of generated by the pineal gland lusty feelings, I don't know, but to your point about it being a bit more contained and concentrating on really these sort of 3 characters, and then Pretorius being gross on the outside. It does you sort of feel I don't know, it really pulls me along with them,
It does. It's so much fun. And Crawford's kind of transformation as well, when he becomes this bald penis head. That's a horrible... I mean, the whole final act is just bananas and gross, isn't it? It's wonderful.
So gross. And he's he's bald, and he's got the thing in his head coming out of his head, and he's covered in because he basically got eaten by that thing in the cellar. Kind of got spat out, and I don't know, it had eaten all his hair. And so he's just covered in wounds, and he's bald, and he's got the thing coming out of his head. And I mean, he's just this kind of pitiful.
Yes.
He's almost like a baby. He's because he's sort of bald and pale and sickly looking, and they're
So
having
true.
to look after him. He's really pitiful.
I love that, we've talked about how bloody sexy Ken Foree and Barbara Crampton are in this, but it's Jeffrey Coombs is happy to be as unsexy as possible, right? And it's you couldn't get much less sexy than, like you said, looking like some pale, pallid baby creature with a penis coming out of his head.
Right? I don't know that it does get any less sexy than that.
We get the whole spectrum here. It's so good. What do you think of... we should wrap up soon, but let's just talk about the ending. I find Barbara Crampton really interesting. Her performance all the way through. And again, like we talked about with Jeffrey Coombs, it's a heightened performance, right? I mean, she goes big in this, but I don't think any of it is bad or not deliberate in a way. But that kind of final scream exclamation that she has at the end of the movie is really great as well, right? Where she kind of screams in fear and then it becomes kind of maniacal laughter and everything. It's just like, I love that moment. So good.
I just adore it, because I think for me, it's that moment, and she plays it so well, because it's that moment that encapsulates what Lovecraftian horror is. This idea that she has just been through this experience. She has just encountered these beings and this other world and humans who have been affected by it and sort of given themselves over, whether they are sort of worshipping it or have just been victims of it. And she's just had this absolutely indescribable encounter and experience, and she just like cries and laughs and says it ate him, and then she like sob laughs, and then it crashes to black. I mean, that is like I couldn't have hoped for a better ending to this film. I think it is perfection.
I do as well. It's just perfection. Everything it's going for, it nails, I think.
Yeah.
That, like, absolute deranged tone.
Yes.
I mean, it is just deranged. It actually, again, reminds me a little bit of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? That's a bit like Marilyn Burns at the end. And again, that film where it's like, it couldn't possibly get any more deranged than it is. And it's the same with this in a very different way.
You know, the tagline for that film, you know, who will survive and what will be left of them. This idea of what will be left of them is so Lovecraftian. It's like, fine, he's still alive. She's still alive. You know, the narrator of this story or the doctor or whoever is still alive, but they will never, ever be the same again because of what they have seen, and because of what they now know is kind of out there. And that, to me, is like the absolute key of cosmic horror, like the real horror of it, this idea that we are just not meant to see it, and if we do, like, we're just gone, you know?
Yeah, we're gone. It destroys us, basically. I love it. It's such a, like you said, what a perfect description of cosmic horror in a way. What a perfect example of it. Cosmic horror, I find a very difficult thing to describe in words, but in some ways it's like, just show somebody from beyond if they want to know what cosmic horror is, right? Or
purple
this
lighting,
exact double bill.
Purple lighting, sexiness, gross monsters, tentacles, and people just losing their fucking minds at the end. Yeah. All in 86 minutes. Oh my God. Beautiful
Could you get
stuff.
more perfect? Hello, everybody. Before we get into the second review of this week's episode, just want to take a moment to thank this week's sponsor. That's $20 Patreon subscriber, Chris Newton. A huge thank you to Chris Newton for all of his kindness and generosity for supporting the podcast. And Chris has got some really interesting projects going on, which he's told me a little bit about. Now, he set up his own indie publishing collective called Safety Pin Publishing. And some of their titles might be of interest to a lot of EOH listeners out there, particularly people that are looking for some good, creepy books to read in October. So Chris wrote to me and he says, I've recently set up an indie publishing collective called Safety Pin Publishing. My co-founder, Peter Cakebread, and I met through the UK punk scene and soon found that we had a shared love of all things sinister, geeky, and folkloric. So we decided to bring our punk DIY ethos to the world of dark fiction. Our titles include Chingle Hall, a new novel by Zoe Swan about Britain's most haunted house, The Bleak Midwinter, a collection of frighteningly festive tales by a variety of writers to read as the nights grow longer, and Convent Crescent, a coming-of-age supernatural thriller for anyone who was a teenager in the late 90s. Picture the scene. Buffy is on TV, Halloween H2O is playing at your local cinema, Placebo are on the radio, and you're convinced that your neighbour is a serial killer. I love the sound of that one. All of these titles are being released in paperback and ebook in the run up to Halloween, with The Close Murders, a Lovecraftian horror, good timing, set in the vaults of 18th century Edinburgh, due early next year. So for anyone who wants to check out any of these excellent sounding horror books. You can check them out at safetypinpublishing.co.uk, and you can also find them on all the socials, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. That's Safety Pin Publishing. Chris also says, if any EOH listeners have book blogs, podcasts or YouTube channels and would be interested in reviewing any of our titles, drop us a message and we'll send you some complimentary ebooks. Incredible. And he's also said, if any of your listeners are based in the Northwest, we're hosting a launch party for Chingle Hall at the Stag's Head in Goosenarg? Is that how you pronounce that town? Goosenarg? The pub right next to Chingle Hall itself on Saturday the 23rd of October. And you can see more details of that on their Facebook page. Incredible. So one more time, a huge thank you to Chris Newton, founder of the horror indie publishers Safety Pin Publishing. Very, very cool. And don't forget, if you want to become an official Evolution of Horror sponsor and have your own little segment on the podcast just like this, where you could plug your own blog or podcast or band or anything you want, basically, then you can sign up to our Patreon and subscribe at a $20 per month level. Patreon.com/Evolution of Horror. You can also sign up at a $5 or $10 level, and you can get all kinds of bonus episodes and other free content over there on that feed. Just this week, we put out our Halloween Kills bonus episode, in which me and Josh Tonks discussed, spoiler-free and in spoilerific detail, what we thought of the latest Halloween movie. So you'll get all of that and a whole bunch more. Patreon.com/Evolution of Horror. Okay, let's move into the second half of this week's episode as Becky and I talk more cosmic horror and discuss Paul W.S. Anderson's Event Horizon.
Event Horizon is the culmination of a secret government project to create a spacecraft capable of faster-than-light flight. The ship doesn't really go faster than light. What it does is it creates a dimensional gateway that allows it to jump instantaneously from one point of the universe to another light years away.
Where's she been for the last 7 years, Doctor?
That's what we're here to find out.
After 7 years in deep space,
There were 18 people on board this ship when it disappeared. I want them all accounted for.
Opening outer door.
it came back abandoned.
Any crew? Negative. This place is a tomb.
But it didn't come back alone.
Captain Miller! I've got some problems here!
This ship has been beyond the boundaries of our universe. Who knows where it's been? And what it's brought back with it.
What is it? The ship is reacting to us and the reactions are getting stronger.
What are you telling me? That this ship is alive?
I have such wonderful things to show you.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, I'm so excited. I'm just so excited. Oh, God, I love this film. All right. The crew of the Lewis and Clark, not the 90s Superman show, are on a top secret rescue mission to the Event Horizon, which disappeared 7 years ago near Neptune. After weeks in stasis, they arrive to find the Event Horizon with no life on board, some extremely unsettling wall decoration, and a CD-ROM showing the nightmarish fate of the original crew. It turns out that the gravity drive that was meant to send the ship to Proxima Centauri via its own black hole at a speed faster than light actually went to hell. Now the Event Horizon is back and it seems really cross. It's the Shining X. The Shining goes to space.
Oh, exactly that. Exactly that. There's so much to discuss with this film. Brilliant synopsis. First of all, Becky, like you said at the beginning, I told you that I was doing a series on space horror, on cosmic horror. The first thing you asked for was, can I do Event Horizon? Mm-hmm. Why this film? What is it about this movie you love so much?
I'm just so fond of it. I can tell you where I was the first time I saw it. I was at my friend Nick Pointer's house. Mm-hmm. He lived just up the road from me. We were at sixth form college, so I was 16 or 17. We got it on VHS and from Blockbusters, or it might have been Venus Video because Venus was the little one in Farnham, but there was a Blockbuster in Aldershot, so I'm not 100% sure. And there was just a big group of us, and we just all sat in his dark living room and watched Event Horizon. None of us had a clue what we were in for. And my boyfriend at the time, Chris, hi Chris, if you're listening, he won't be. He like walked me home, and he was so scared, like, to just be kind of outside, that he stayed at my house because he was too scared to go home.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
This kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, why do we find Event Horizon scary, Mike? None of us are in space. None of us have the option or any likelihood at all to find ourselves in a situation where we might be on a ship that's been to hell and come back. Like, it's just not going to happen. And yet we sat there, all of us, in this dark living room in Aldershot, and just shat ourselves. Like, it is so scary, and there is nothing more in the world that I love than being scared. And so it's just always stayed with me. And it's just every single time I watch it, I just have a brilliant fucking time. I just love it. What a film.
What a film. I completely agree with you. I first watched it as a kid. It terrified me. I never forgot it. And I don't think I watched it again for about 20 years, but I remembered it so vividly. You know, it's like the images stayed with me, the characters stayed with me, you know, and I've watched it a couple of times in the last few years, and it's just so much fun. I text you today just when I was halfway through it, being like, God, this movie's fucking good, isn't it? Because it really is. And again, it feels like a movie that is somewhat underappreciated, I think.
I guess I kind of agree. But what I really loved was you put up, I think it was like a screen grab of your letterbox for like the few episodes that are coming up soon, and you put it on the Facebook group, and like, what are people looking forward to? And so many people said Event Horizon, can't wait for the episode on Event Horizon. And that like made me so joyful. I was like, oh my God, no, people do love it. Like, they get it. I feel like our crowd, like, we get it. Like, there's just something about it. It's The Shining in space.
Well, this is what's amazing about it, I think. That of all the films I've talked about so far, I don't know if there are any, really. Even Alien and The Thing, I don't know whether any of them actually blend sci-fi and horror so perfectly as this one. Like, I really think that it's using big sci-fi concepts and ideas, the sort of thing that Chris Nolan makes films about, with haunted house gothic horror, right, as well, and it does it so well. And, you know, people always talk about Alien being a haunted house film in space. Everyone says it's a haunted house. This is literally a haunted house in space. Like, this is, I think, a much better example in a way of that haunted house in space. Like you said, it's The Shining in space, isn't it?
I suppose you know, with Alien, because I've heard it called a haunted house, like a haunted house in space, but I've also heard it called like a slasher in space, because it's also like a, because that's how I personally, maybe I haven't heard that, maybe that's just what I think, but it's like the big killer, and it just goes around and it picks them off one by one until there's a final girl, right? Exactly. With this, as you say, it's such a good example of a haunted house, because, and you used the word earlier, it's like a gothic. So, okay. I've been watching.
Your brain's you've got so much to say.
I've got so much to say. I'm sorry. I really need to slow down. I'm so sorry. I'm really overexcited. Okay. Just focusing on like the creepy gothic stuff for a moment. Been watching a lot of extras, Mike. So, they basically modelled the Event Horizon on Notre Dame Cathedral. How
Amazing.
Good is this?
So literally Gothic, right? Gothic architecture.
So they wanted to, as well as the kind of, you know, ghostly, haunting feel, they wanted to really kind of inject the film and like have running throughout it like a real kind of religious sort of aspect to it. And I think this comes back to what we were talking about earlier with cosmic horror and this like mysticism. So they really wanted to kind of have, so it almost goes like occult and like possession as well
Definitely.
as like the kind of haunting thing. And this thing with Notre Dame, apparently they did like a 3D scan of the cathedral, and they used the towers as they sort of flipped them, I think horizontal it must be, and then so that is like the two like side parts of the like main part of the event horizon, and then they've got that, as you know, like the huge corridor going down the middle. So what they wanted was for that to be like the cathedral aisle going down to the altar, which is then essentially like the core, right, the gravity drive. So that's kind of the altar where all of the like worship happens. And then if you look at certain room designs and stuff on the ship, they've got pillars like you do in a Gothic cathedral. When DJ is like, when he gets like Silence of the Lambs upside down.
Yes.
So some people refer to that as like a crucifixion, which it isn't really, but he's like hung, you know, from the ceiling. Behind him, there's like a triptych window, like the sort of stuff that, I mean, I've never been on a spaceship, but you don't assume that it's going to be like Gothic arches and pillars and stuff, do you? And like they really injected that into the design of the ship, like so consciously, because they wanted to kind of invoke this kind of spiritualism, this like religious aspect, like all through the story. And like, it's just kind of, I don't know, like just subconsciously there the whole time. It's amazing.
It's so good, isn't it? Let's talk about Paul Anderson, as he's credited as in this, before he became Paul W.S. Anderson. Because there are so many bloody Andersons, aren't there? But Paul W.S. Anderson, a director with not a great reputation, right? Obviously, famously, he's made the Resident Evil movies, but he was also responsible for Alien versus Predator and a bunch of other movies. Always accused of being a bit video gamey, that kind of thing. He made the Mortal Kombat movie as well in the 90s, right? What do you think of him and, you know, what he does here with this movie as well?
So I don't have a horse in this race, right? I've never seen a Resident Evil film. I've never seen the Mortal Kombat film. I have seen Alien versus Predator, which...
It's not the worst in the series.
It's not the worst in the series. Now, I haven't seen AVP2, but I have heard you talk about it at length, and I don't need to see it because I'll just listen to you talk about it again. Because it was. I mean,
I've still not seen it, Becky, because it's so fucking dark. I couldn't actually see what went on. So
that chat you had with James and Matt, honestly, I was like crying with laughter. It was so funny. But you know, I don't really have much of an opinion on him, to be honest. I think he does a really great job at this film. And I know that when so I think Monster Hunter was his most recent one. And, you know, there was a bit of like sniff about it and, you know, a bit of eye rolling and stuff. And again, I didn't really take much notice because I don't have a lot of, emotion invested in it. I haven't seen many of his films, but for Event Horizon, I just think it's amazing. And he had this vision, and you know, he was like young. He was like 29 or 30 when he made it. Apparently he'd already done Mortal Kombat, and he'd done a film called Shopping, which was like his first, so he's like working with the same producer all the time. He was working with returning cast members. You know, he'd worked with Sean Pertwee in the past. He'd worked with Jason Isaacs in the past. He was working with the same producer. So he seems to build around him these teams of people who, you know, are very happy to keep coming back and working with him. So he can't be doing anything that wrong, certainly on set. And apparently he wanted to do something horror. He had apparently, at the time that he got the script, he was absolutely obsessed with The Shining, which explains a lot.
It really does.
And you know, they got this script. Apparently, it was a little bit sort of overwritten and stuff. And he and the producer just like really, and I assume some other sort of screenwriters who like stepped in, but like worked to kind of strip it all back. They put the cast together. They put together a team of people who, like some were real like stalwarts. You know, the people who were doing like effects and the DP and stuff. And then other people who were like really fresh to the game because they wanted like fresh blood on set. And they filmed it all at Pinewood. And his kind of idea of what he wanted to create, they like that's what you then get on screen. And there are stories about sort of time problems and stuff was cut and it sort of never like quite reached his complete vision, but it got pretty fucking close, and I just have to respect him for it. I think he does an amazing job.
Me too. A 29-year-old guy, and by the sounds of it, almost similar. I mean, not as disastrous, but a similar kind of production story to something like Alien 3, right? Like very little time, very stretched, these huge, big, grand sets, these ambitious story ideas, and the fact that he was able to make anything semi-coherent, but let alone a film that turned out as good as this, is really impressive, right? I think, and I think what he's often criticised for, and I haven't seen a whole lot of his films, but what I find with his films is that they are often style over substance. Like he's very good at really slick video game visuals, but just a bit rubbish at story, a bit rubbish at character, anything kind of human, basically, he's not very good at, I suppose. And sometimes the editing can be so choppy, and again, everything can look a bit like a kind of video game montage or something. Sure. But again, it's just not the case in this movie at all. And I don't know whether it was partly to do with the script by Paul Eisner or just the amazing cast he's working with, but I wouldn't throw those criticisms at all at this movie, because I love everyone in it. I love the story that it tells. I particularly love the first half, I think, more in the kind of build of atmosphere and dread and mystery and everything, I think that's when it's at its best and firing on all cylinders,
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
Let's talk about this incredible cast, shall we? I mean, like Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Kathleen Quinlan, Jolie Richardson, some absolutely incredible people in this as well. It feels like a real ensemble, doesn't it? What do you think of this cast?
I love it. I love that. So it's funny, this film, because I always sort of, if I think about it, which I do relatively often, I sort of think of it as this huge, like, Hollywood, like, American production. But actually,
it's quite British too, isn't it?
It's super British. Like, Anderson's British, the producer's British. You've got Jolie Richardson, Jason Isaacs, and Sean Pertwee, who are all super British. And like, Sam Neill is, he's from New Zealand, obviously, and he plays Weir as being from New Zealand. Yes. And I love that, they've all got like their little sort of flag patches on and stuff. That, it's like, you called it an ensemble cast, and it really kind of is. So Jolie Richardson, for example, apparently when she was like doing all the sort of techno babble, she'd like get to the end of the scene and be like, what the fuck am I talking about? Because like it's such an unusual role for her, certainly like where she was then. I mean, I can't think of another role that she does similar to this. And, she's really physical in it. She's from this, sort of theatrical dynasty of like British, like prestige
kind of British stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And in this, she's like, wearing a flight suit and talking about, I don't know, resonate. She says 5x5 at one point, which I really enjoyed. She's the only other person in the universe, I think, that ever says that apart from Faith. And she just absolutely throws herself into it, and you believe her as Stark. And I find that with every member of the cast, like, you just believe them, like, they're so good. And apparently, like, they had a really great relationship on set and stuff, and they sort of go out drinking and that, and you sort of feel that, and you need that when you're watching a group of people who are supposed to be playing a crew, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
They've got to have this camaraderie and this chemistry, as if they've been working together for, in close quarters on a spaceship for years. And I totally buy that.
Totally. I totally agree with you. It's something that Alien does so well, yes. Right? That idea that this is a crew of people, real people who know each other and have worked together, and they've all got their sort of backstories that become quite important too, right? Obviously, you've got kind of Peters, who has this kind of son that she's left at home, and obviously Sam Neill with his wife, and they've all got these kind of these backstories, these characters, all of that's really interesting about it. And the performances are all so good and so interesting, because you've got, again, similar to somebody like Ken Foree's character in From Beyond, I think Lawrence Fishburne feels like the one that's really grounded, that really kind of you need there as that kind of that reality check in a way, right? He's kind of the real... He sort of emerges as the hero of the film, actually, in a way, doesn't he? Because we start off with Sam Neill, kind of thinking Sam Neill is our kind of hero, is our way into this story, and then he goes on a completely different direction. And
you do, but also, like, right from the beginning, he is this outsider. Like, he's the one who is kind of hitched along for a ride almost. Like, they are the established crew, and he is... I think I can't remember who says it, but they, right at the beginning, Sam Neill sort of says, like, is he all right about Miller, about the captain? And they're like, oh yeah, he's as good as he can be, like, knowing that there's a stranger on his ship. Something like that. This idea that
he's the alien hitchhiker in this.
Yeah,
right?
There's this kind of disconnect between him, and that always, like, sows a sort of like a little seed of suspicion or like paranoia or whatever.
Yes.
And you're right about, like, Lawrence Fishburne, because, like, as the captain, you know, I mean, what an actor. Like, he just brings so much like gravitas, you know, and he's so solid and calm. And a little bit, actually, you and I talked about The Omen, and with Gregory Peck in that.
Right, exactly.
And this idea that an actor like Gregory Peck, again, that gravitas, if he's scared, the audience knows, like, oh shit, like, this is serious. And I feel like Lawrence Fishburne's quite a similar actor to that. Like, he's so grounded that as soon as he starts to lose his shit a bit, it's like, oh dear, this isn't going to end well.
It's so true. Whereas with Sam Neill, there's something brilliantly sort of unhinged about Sam Neill. And, you know, again, like a kind of, in some ways, unsung horror icon as well, Sam Neill, right? I mean, like, when you think of Possession, The Omen 3, In the Mouth of Madness, and this, it's like he's... You know, a proper horror icon.
I don't know who you're hanging out with, mate, but he's very much a sung horror icon in my circles.
I think these days he's more well known probably for Jurassic Park, whatever else, you know, or his adorable Twitter profile, maybe. I don't know.
But ducks and his pigs.
He's so wholesome, isn't he?
He's so wholesome. And also, but do you get this impression that he's, like, quite sort of mischievous?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's got, like, such a twinkle in his eye, doesn't he? And I think you get that with Weir, where at the beginning he's like this excited child, like that they've found his toy, they found his lost toy, and he's like hyped about it. And then I always like to play this game with myself with this film, where it's like, where does he shift?
Yes.
Right?
No.
Where does the ship get him? Because he's sort of a little bit overexcited and stuff at the beginning, and you sort of think, like, oh, has it got him already? But it can't do, because he's not on the ship and whatever. And it's almost like Sam Neill sort of plays him as being very open and susceptible to that. So, like, almost then as soon as he's on board, it's like, got him, you know? It's
got him. It's so true. And, you know, again, the Shining comparison is there, where you watch Jack Nicholson and you go, was he, like, mad from the start, basically, you know? And it's a similar kind of trajectory in this, isn't it? Definitely.
Well, because they both have these dark pasts, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, Jack Nicholson's character's got, you know, this sort of the drinking in his past, and, you know, he's looking for a job, and it's sort of maybe not, you don't sort of get the flashback so much, but you definitely get this idea that he's a man who's relatively close to the edge already.
Definitely.
And then, you know, through the flashbacks that you get with Weir, you know that he's lost his wife, and that he feels like tremendous guilt because he wasn't there, and, you know, she took her own life. And it's like, yeah, again, like, he's kind of, you can understand why he's, like, open and susceptible to lose his shit by the end of this film.
Totally. How brilliant and weird is his scream in that dream sequence? It reminds me a bit of Donald Sutherland. Whenever Donald Sutherland has to scream in something like Don't Look Now, it's always a bit like, it's that same kind of
it's exactly
very weird.
The same. That's such a good shout. Yeah, it's amazing. I love him.
Love him.
Iconic scream.
Absolutely iconic. Let's talk about should we talk about the science of this movie? Because I sometimes feel like I've got a grasp of it, and then I completely lose. I completely lose all grasp of it.
Okay.
Because, right, he
Do you need me to get a porno
piece of
centerfold
paper
out and a pencil? Yeah,
I think I do. The Event Horizon went through a wormhole into like another. Well, it basically jumped somewhere else in the universe, right? At the speed of light, essentially, and disappeared for 7 years and then jumped back.
Yes.
The thing that confuses me about it is that there is the gateway to this other world is inside the ship.
Yes. Well, yes.
Did the ship get sucked up its own hole? Get sucked up its own black hole? Like, I don't really understand. If the ship itself actually disappeared, how did that happen?
I mean, I don't know why you're asking me about the science. You've obviously got it. Yeah, you've got it.
I've got it. Okay, fine.
I'll put Vanessa away.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love its ideas. And again, like I said, this is something that you'd get in Interstellar. I mean, there's literally a scene in Chris Nolan's Interstellar where a character demonstrates by folding over a piece of paper and putting a pencil through it.
Yeah, I think in the cinema I screamed Event Horizon probably out loud. Like, fuck off, Nolan.
Fuck off, Nolan. Because again, Nolan would be the sort of person that would be like, I've never watched a film by Paul W.S. Anderson, but he's definitely ripped off Event Horizon there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but I love that it has these big kind of brain-melting ideas, actually, in a way.
But don't you think that the thing with the paper, like, that is something that, I mean, right. The reason I smirked when you said, let's talk about the science, because I'm not a sciencey person. As you know, I can barely do subtraction, let alone talk about black holes. So that visual that they use in that is just so clever to tell the story, and it's built so perfectly because it isn't just like it's not just like smashing you over the head with exposition, because Weir built the ship and he understands what happens. The crew of the Lewis and Clark, they're like a rescue team, right? So they're like
those kind
rescue.
Of blue collar worker types that you get in Alien almost, right? They're not like big scientists or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So he has to explain it to them, and by proxy explains it to the audience, which is brilliant. And when he starts saying, like, he's like, oh, I'll do it in layman's, and then just starts using like all of these crazy words, and then I think it's Cooper is like, nah, let's forget layman's, like, do you speak English? And that's when he grabs the piece of paper, and like that is such a smart way of explaining, as you say, like these big ideas that this film has. You then get like beautiful moments of exposition later where you get Julie Richardson character say something like, a black hole, what, the most destructive thing in the universe? It's like, yeah, thank you.
Excellent Jolie Richardson impression, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I like it. Yeah, no, it's true. And what's kind of interesting about this film / maybe messes it a bit, but I mean, not in a way that makes me enjoy it any less, but that it does go from being a science fiction to being a sort of psychological horror to being a sort of occult supernatural horror, doesn't it? And like by the end, it's like, okay, we're no longer in any kind of science realm. Like we're literally dealing with sort of hell dimensions and stuff like that, right? By that point.
Yeah, it's like, I guess they use the science fiction to get us to the ghosts and the possessions and the occult and the religious horror. It's like, so some sci-fi horror, the horror comes from the science. It comes from, so, okay, for example, with From Beyond, it sort of comes from the experiment more directly, because the experiment has sort of opened this thing and literally the things have come through and they're like grabbing people. Whereas with this, you sort of, you use the science fiction a little more remotely, where that's sort of almost happened in the past, right? It's taken the ship and the ship's come back. So you've sort of done that bit. It gets explained, but you don't really see it. And then what we're dealing with is the aftermath. And the aftermath is that now the ship is possessed by hell,
Yes, the ship itself is evil, basically, isn't it? In that kind of, again, Overlook Hotel or Hill House or, and the classic kind of haunted house thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me just go back and talk a little bit more again about just how fucking cool this film looks. I mean, another thing I love is this idea that the ship is lost in the orbit of Neptune, and there's that amazing reveal of it as they kind of go through that stormy cloud. And Neptune, I looked up, as well as being the furthest planet out, so it's the kind of furthest you can be in the solar system. I mean, poor Pluto got demoted. Poor Pluto, I know. So it is now officially the farthest planet, and it is known as the stormiest planet. It's horrendously stormy, apparently. But what I love is that, so you get the kind of the perils of space, the perils of being in a vacuum, and there are some horrific moments dealing with airlocks and that kind of thing, which always freaks me out. But then also you've got these classic horror tropes, again, like classic universal horror, where it's literally like we're on a dark and stormy night, right? There is thunder and lightning and crashing, and it's such a great way of kind of putting all of the eggs in one horror basket here, where we've got the horrors of space, but we've also got some proper literal atmosphere as well. It's
absolutely,
so
yeah. That's so interesting about the Neptune thing. I didn't know that about the storms. I love that.
It's really interesting. So the back end of Neptune being this like really kind of unknowable, stormy place. So it's kind of the perfect setting. And
I tell you the other thing it reminds me of is Serenity. And this idea that the Reavers come from the humans who went to the very, very, very edge of the universe and basically like glimpsed into the void and went mad, fucking mad. And, when you see the Reavers and stuff, like it is this sort of very like hellscape thing, isn't it, where they're sort of cutting themselves up and sort of putting
very
dead
similar
bodies
to this.
on the fronts of their ships and stuff. So I mean, you know me, I always know that you enjoy to chat a little bit about Serenity, so I thought I'd drop that in. It's the same thing, isn't it? This idea of just like the very, very edge of like existence, and you sort of glimpse something that you're not supposed to. Like, again, this idea of having pushed it too far. You're too greedy, too curious, and you have to pay the price.
Yes, exactly that. You're so right. I wouldn't be surprised if this did inspire Firefly, Serenity, and a lot of science fiction. I mean, that idea as well. How many stories have we seen? And I'm sure Event Horizon isn't the first, obviously, but how many stories have we seen about, picking up a distress signal from a kind of ghost ship, that they go inside another ship and it's like, what happened here? Everyone's gone or everyone's dead or whatever. That's such a kind of classic as well, isn't it? And again, let me ask you about just the look of the Event Horizon here, because I think, again, there's a bit of ropey 90s CGI in this, but on the whole, this film looks astonishing, and I love everything about the interiors of the Event Horizon, the rotating corridors, and just, it's amazing, right?
That bit. What does he say? He says it looks like a meat grinder. Have you seen Galaxy Quest?
Oh, I love Galaxy Quest.
So the bit where Sigourney Weaver is like, why is this here? Why? What idiot writer? Like, what purpose does this serve? Why is this here? And I think of that every single time I see that fucking corridor with like, it looks like the inside of a meat grinder. And they try, like, Weir explains it and he's like, oh, it manages to hold on to the gravity field while blah, 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 blah. It's like, fuck off. You just wanted it to look cool.
Looks cool. Look disorientating. And it's true. I saw Paul W.S. Anderson say that he, again, this is the sort of shit that he gets from people, because he said that he literally got it from like a Disney World theme park ride that he thinks is great, where you walk through a tunnel and it's all spinning and you feel all disorientated, That's basically why he put it in.
They have something like that at the Science Museum as well, I think.
Yeah, they do. Cool. They do. Yeah. It's great. I mean, but I love the look of this ship. It's incredible.
I love it. And again, it's like, I've never been on a spaceship, Mike. I never will. But this isn't what I assume spaceships look like. I mean, I've seen Apollo 13. That's pretty realistic as far as I know.
That's just like a tin can, isn't it? Tin can. They sit in. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that you do. There's one bit where there are coffin-shaped doors, Mike. Did you notice the coffin-shaped doors?
Oh, did I? Oh, my God, I love it.
There's way a spaceship needs coffin-shaped doors, but the Event Horizon has them because it's been to hell.
Yeah, because it is Dracula's dungeon. It's a Transylvanian castle in space. It's absolutely incredible. I love everything about it. I love that moment when Sam Neill is he in like a vent or something, and it's all green, you know, and there's that amazing kind of dolly zoom shot as it kind of as it seems to get longer. I love all of that.
Like that actually like makes my stomach go a bit. It's such like it's probably the most extreme dolly zoom that I've ever seen. Like it really goes on, and it really like and that kind of that like sickly green that they're sort of using in those ducts that again, and it's sort of, I mean, this is pre-Matrix, isn't it? But it's got that like Matrix feel to it. That sort of, I don't know. There's something sort of technical and future-y about that green. Yeah,
absolutely. It's very 90s, I think, isn't it? No, I don't know.
Oh, speaking of very 90s, can we please talk about the Orbital score?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I love it. And there's a bit of Prodigy at the end credits as well, isn't there? I love it. It's so good.
It's so good. Like, the music, the opening credits to this film are so ridiculous. It's like being at a club. It's amazing. And I didn't know until today, like, honestly, again, the number of fucking times I've seen this film, and I never knew it was Orbital. And I was, like, looking stuff up today. And just that moment of, like, of course it is.
Wow, I love it.
Because listen to it, and because it was 1997.
It was 1997, and I don't know why I always think of 1997 as being a very kind of like colourful. I think of things like greens and reds and stuff, and this was the same year as Alien Resurrection, which was really wacky and out there as well. And it was that era of like big colourful, like the Joel Schumacher Batman films, and like everything was kind of like big and over the top and a bit silly and filled with that kind of music and just great fun, right? Yeah. Great times.
Yeah. It's like the soundtrack to Blade. You know, like Propeller Heads were doing a lot of stuff at this time. Like it's that stuff, right? Oh, I just love it. So good.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? Should we talk a bit about some of these moments of horror as well, as like people start getting picked off or horrible things start happening to people? I mean, I think one of the best scenes is the moment when the young guy gets trapped in the airlock.
And it is the best scene.
What a long, sustained, terrifying scene of horror that is. And again, this is the horror of space. This is always something that scares me in every film or TV show set in space. This idea of you getting sucked out of an airlock and, you know, your eyeballs coming out of your sockets or your veins bursting or like all of the stuff that happens, you know, from that kind of air pressure release and all of that. Yeah. It's a horrible... And also what adds to this scene is that he's also kind of possessed at the beginning of it, right? And he's got this kind of weird voice coming out of him.
It wouldn't be as bad as it is if he didn't like come to halfway through it.
Yes.
That is the moment when he realizes what's happening and he's like, what am I doing in here? Let me out. And they're like, we can't. And he's like, no, let me out. And they're like, I can't.
No.
And then you've got that amazing, like, because you've got, like, Peter's obviously the doctor, like, they even sort of call each other, like, Mama Bear and Baby Bear. Like, they've got, you know, he's almost like her sort of surrogate son, as you mentioned earlier. You know, she's left her son behind. And so she has this relationship with Justin. And, you know, so she's at the window. Stark's trying to open the door and she can't because he's done the override while he's possessed by the hell ship. Then you've got like Lawrence Fishburne who's outside and he's like, don't worry, I'll come back. And so it's like that sort of race against time thing. I mean, what a scene. Like the whole setup is incredible. And then it's not just like a race against time, something's going to happen, bomb's going to blow, airlock's going to blow thing in like an action film, because then it gets capped off by this incredible like body horror, eyeballs exploding, as you say, like as he is ejected into space, he coughs up like a body full of blood and his skin is splitting, and I mean it's just so good.
So good. It's really gross. It's a brilliant... It's a brilliant piece of suspense. Like you said, it's a great build-up. It's a slow burn, and then it really pays off with some horrible body horror. And somehow it feels even more cruel that he doesn't die.
I know.
Like, I don't know. There's something about the fact that he's still alive with, like, no eyes and
100%.
bleeding internally, right?
He's one of the 3 that gets home.
Yes. Why? I mean, why? I don't know why. Why didn't they just kill him off? But like, there's something even worse about it that he is still alive, and they just have to like stick him in a tank or something, don't they?
No, yeah, they basically put him straight into stasis, I think. And I don't know. It's like 2047. Maybe they'll give him new eyes. Who knows? I mean, there are enough just like lying around the ship. They could probably pick some up and just get them in him. I reckon he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Yeah. That's a real standout moment for me. I think it's excellent.
I think that is probably the scene of the film.
Yeah.
And there are so many scenes.
What do you think then of this other side of this story where we've got the depiction of kind of hell? There's lots of kind of like short bursts of images where we suddenly dip into, Cenobites, basically, right? People that have, like, there are such kind of Hellraiser imagery, chains, and people that have, cut into their own faces, and kind of blood orgies and all of that kind of thing. What do you think of all that stuff?
I just said that the last bit was my favourite bit, but it's not. It's this bit. It's so good. And also like this, when they talk about kind of it not quite being the film because they ran out of time. It was a lot of this stuff that they actually had to lose.
Yeah.
And basically like So I think like the short version of the story is the studio wanted to bring the release forward because they were really excited about it, and they just wanted to get it out. They'd seen the dailies and stuff. They were really excited about this film. And I think because Anderson was relatively inexperienced, he'd only done a couple of films and he hadn't done a lot of like huge studio stuff. He was like, yeah, no worries. Like we'll cut 4 weeks off and we'll get it to you sooner. And then he realized that actually he was going to run out of time. And so when they got to the test screening, it was just a bit of a shambles. And they some of the effects maybe didn't look good. It was way too long. It was really flabby. There were some bits that were badly directed that they hadn't had a chance to cut out because they kind of hadn't got to that bit yet and all of this. And so it tested really badly. And the studio reaction, because I think it was over 2 hours, the studio reaction was just cut half an hour out of it. And so it was a lot of this sort of stuff that they just cut. And so there should, I think in the kind of, if there was ever a director's cut, a lot of this stuff is kind of more at the forefront. And actually what you get is it through the CD-ROM, you get this sort of, super fast edited, glimpses, which is super effective actually, because it does give you because you're not really sure what you're looking at. You're not really sure what's happening. And that makes it even more scary. But it's like this sort of orgiastic, Hieronymus Bosch vision of hell. Yes. People fucking each other to death, basically. And, putting their own arms down their own throats and barbed wire. And, it's yeah, I mean, it's full on. And I don't know, it might be that actually it's more effective because they couldn't show more.
Yeah, I mean, those images certainly scared me as a child. And because they're every time you see those images, they're like jump scares because they're so quick. They're flash. And
it's strobing and
Yeah, it's 90s, bit of orbital, bit of strobing, But yeah, no, it's true. I think they're really effective. And do you think, Sam, going back to the whole sort of Lovecraftian element of it, how Lovecraftian would you say this story is? And do you think that Sam Neill's character fits that kind of Pistorius kind of, guy who wants to push himself too far and learn too much? Or is it just that he's possessed? What, I guess how much of that kind of Lovecraftian anti-hero, I suppose, is Weir in this story?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think he is to a certain extent, because he has built the ship. He is the scientist behind it. And so often in Lovecraft stories, it is the sort of scientist or the explorer who comes a cropper because they push too far, or they stumble across something that they kind of unwittingly, they sort of didn't know was, they weren't necessarily searching for it.
Yes.
And I think, so I think he does fit the mold. I think he sort of becomes possessed, and I'm not sure you often get in, and I might be incorrect about this, but I'm not sure that you often get in Lovecraft stories that they then become this kind of big bad and sort of try to take everyone else down with them. It just often is actually just that they kind of come a cropper, and you're like, they might
just
accidentally
succumb to something,
like suck another couple of people sort of down with their wake who like go to find out what happened. And that's kind of what happens here is, you know, they've pushed themselves to the edge of space, and really this is like the sort of rescue party, which is often what happens in a Lovecraft story, is somebody sort of goes to find out this person has disappeared and something's turned up and they've gone to investigate what's happening. So yeah, I mean, I think it does tick a lot of the boxes. I think that it's sort of a bit more bombastic maybe than like even From Beyond, because, you know, you said so well yourself, like how contained that is. And I think that feels, the fact that it's just in this guy's like attic feels more. And
it's such a simple setup in From Beyond too. It's like, here's this machine that will let you see this other world. Go. Like, that's it, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of explains away everything we see.
Yeah.
Whereas there are so many more factors and elements going into this, isn't there? You know,
but I mean, it's definitely, like, you can see the genesis there, and I mean, I think again, like it's 100% what I would refer to as cosmic horror. This again, because this idea of the extra dimensional, like, or the alternative dimension, going there and encountering things that we shouldn't, and that sort of altering us in this like irretrievable way. Yeah.
And his transformation is a bit like Pistorius, you know, the way he looks at the end. Almost there is something of that, and I wonder whether, even though he is possessed, whether he's almost more susceptible to it because he kind of was inviting it. He wanted to know, he wanted to find out. There's a moment, isn't there, when Lawrence Fishburne's character is like, we're aborting this mission, we're leaving this place, and he really, really doesn't want to go, even though there's nothing really left for them to do. He's like, Lawrence Fishburne's like, there's no one to rescue, you know, that, like, you know, and he wants to stay, and I think that's probably home. Yeah, you are, and
then that was... not only does he just say it, he then sinks back into the shadows.
Oh, I love it.
So good.
And like you said, he was kind of a little bit weird from the start, and you get the feeling that he was kind of more susceptible to the ships in the way that Jack Torrance was more susceptible to the Overlook, right? And what it does to him, I think.
Yeah, they were pushing on an open door with Weir, I
reckon. Yeah. Do you say? I love it. I haven't even asked you about Sean Pertwee. Is he your big crush in this film?
I love him so much. Like, I just fucking love Sean Pertwee. Like, I can't handle him. He's so fit, and just like, he's just so like, I don't know, like a bit rough, isn't he? Like, he's
rough.
He's just so, but he's so good in everything he's in, and I just feel like I kind of. It's just always a real treat when Sean Pertwee shows up in something, you know? It's like, this is good anyway, and then you get a little bit of Sean Pertwee as like just some little extra sprinkles on top. And in this, he's so good, and he's sort of wiry, and he's a bit sort of gruff, and he smokes, and he's got like... Hi, Alex Ayling. He's got a little fuckboy hat on.
Yeah, fuckboy beanie.
There's like a bit when like there's the explosion and he gets sort of thrown backwards off of his chair and like does a kind of like backwards roll on the floor, gets up, fag still in his mouth. Like this is my kind of guy, Mike. Yeah. He's got that amazing voice. Like his voice is so good. I just really, really, really love Sean Pertwee, and he's so good in this film.
Yeah, he is good. And that's what's great about this film, is that even, you know, he's a relatively minor role, but like even the supporting players in this have something interesting about them, I think, don't they?
Yeah, totally. And again, like you do, you can see the alien influences like absolutely just dripping off of this, like especially like those early scenes when you've sort of got a shot with like all of the crew members like all in frame, like that is such a Ridley Scott shot,
Yes, all of them when they're getting into their sort of hypersleep outfit, like their underwear, basically. It looks almost shot for shot like we're looking at Alien,
really does.
It?
Like, I mean, there's no way that's accidental. And characters like Smitty, Sean Pertwee's character, they bring that, like, as you say, that sort of blue collar vibe to it. These guys are they're sort of roughnecks out there, right? They're not the sort of highfalutin scientists like we're. He's like, he's down and dirty. He's a pilot, he's a bit gruff. Oh, Mike, I can't. We should move on.
Well, how much? I mean, there is so much bonkers stuff that happens in this. We should talk about the end in a moment as well, because I do love, again, it has a great ending, a little bit like From Beyond for me. But is there anything else before we get to that you want to mention? Any other particular highlight moments or elements of this that we haven't touched upon yet?
Well, like you were just talking about like Sam Neill's transformation. I'm interested to know what you think. Do you think, because like obviously he gets to that point a little bit like Jeffrey Coombs, he's bald and he's gooey and he's pale. Yeah. But obviously he's kind of carved up. Do you think he did that to himself? Or do you think that's like been inflicted upon him?
Yeah, I always assumed he did it to himself.
Yeah, I did as well. Yeah.
But maybe weird,
possessed,
it's but, like,
It's like sort of runes and shit, like weird sort of like hell language. And it genuinely looks really painful. That's what I always think about it, is like the makeup is incredible, that I'm like, oh, don't get any lemon juice on that.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Yeah, it's those cuts that kind of
so
open.
Sore. Yeah, really open. Like those are fresh.
Yes. Yeah, it's horrible. Again, that's a very Hellraiser thing, is something you can really feel that. You can feel that pain with that stuff, which is what makes it so effective. Yeah, and again, yes, some of the 90s CGI, like the kind of globby kind of blood drops and things floating, don't look great now. But everything else about this film, the practical effects, the makeup, I think is still great. I mean, it's so
really
strong.
Good.
All that
it's
stuff.
Really, really
and
good.
that's one of the most famous images now of this film, isn't it? It's what everyone like tweets or gifs, that kind of Sam Neill sat in that chair with the cut up face, kind of smiling, and Lawrence Fishburne being like, oh my God. Look at that. It's so good, isn't it? I love it.
Like, Fishburne's got some incredible lines in this where he's like, this place is a tomb.
Yeah, so good.
And he says the thing about, have you ever seen fire in zero gravity? And he talks about it like flowing like water and stuff. Like this, like the stuff that you see is incredible imagery, but it paints like these amazing pictures even with the script as well, and like the performances.
The way he describes it, like you say, as kind of waves that keep like kind of like passing through and lashing onto things. Like, yeah, it almost feels like something you might read in something by Lovecraft or something, right? It's really interesting that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. It's so good.
Sam Neill, where we're going, we don't need rose. I mean, eyes. We don't need eyes. It's like, come on, guys.
I love it. And he always just has, like you said, Sam Neill has such a twinkle in his eye when he does
like he's
stuff.
Obviously just having the fucking time of his life.
Yeah.
Don't you reckon? He just looks like he's just having so much fun.
100%. He's so good at just throwing himself into these absolute bonkers. I love his performance in Possession too. Obviously not quite as manic as Isabella Gianni in that, but again, I love that he just goes for it with these really intense, wacky performances.
Yeah, 100%.
So good. Something I was talking about with just as like a random diversion, I was talking to Russ on the Not Just for Kids podcast about Jurassic Park, and we were saying about how good those three central characters are, because they're all so fucking weird. Like Laura Dern, who had come from David Lynch, and then Sam Neill, who had come from kind of weird European art house, and then Jeff Goldblum, who had come from stuff like The Fly. And it's like,
and imagine Earth Girls Are Easy, and like...
imagine casting those three in a family Spielberg film together as the leads. It's like, it was genius casting.
And imagine it being the best casting ever. Like,
I know.
It's just, how does that work so well? It's unbelievable. But it's just caliber though, isn't it? It's just quality. It's the same here. If you cast actors like Lawrence Fishburne, Jason Isaacs, Jolie Richardson, Sam Neill, Sean Pertwee, you literally can't go wrong. Like, you can't. You can give them these fucking bonkers sci-fi techno babble melodrama lines to say, but because they are, you know, just at the absolute top of their craft, they make it work. Like, it's just such a joy.
So it gets insane. There's blood orgies, there's possessions, there's visions. You know, people see, Peter sees a vision of her child at one point, doesn't she, I think, and she falls down that thing. And
God, yeah, when she lands. Oh, that is
the blood
brutal.
And, yeah, you can really feel it, can't you?
Yeah.
It's so good. I loved that moment as well. Lawrence Fishburne's character Miller, he sees a vision of the guy who died in the fire, right, as well. So they're all seeing it. It goes full-blown kind of supernatural madness, doesn't it, in the end? What do you think of the final moments of the film where we've got these three survivors and everything, and there's that kind of like you'll never escape kind of vibe to it, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I do love it. It's a little bit of a cheap shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a Freddy Krueger, pulling someone through the window of a door at the end of the film.
Or it's Carrie, isn't it? It's because it's a dream. It's the Carrie shot. It's like she wakes up out of stasis and, you know, like everybody's there to rescue them or whatever. And then he flips up his visor and then it's Sam Neill with all his self-harm. But then, no, it's okay. It's okay. It was like a stasis nightmare. Like,
but even though it was a dream, I guess there's that hint that like maybe that's going to happen to them, right? Because that was kind of how Sam Neill's story starts, where he has the dream in stasis, and like there is almost that vibe that it's like it's infected them now, maybe, or something.
Oh my God, do you think so? I'd never really thought that, but yeah, I like it.
They're still in hell, basically.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh no, it's like Hellraiser 6.
Oh no. Oh my God. No.
Turns out this whole time it was just a dream.
Oh my God. They're in the lament configuration. Basically, basically the event horizon is the lament configuration. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it would have been if it had gone badly.
Yeah, could you imagine if the Event Horizon had turned out to be a Hellraiser sequel? Yeah. You know, and that would have been great. I'd have loved it. Right, well, before we wrap up, let's head on over to this week's segment of Wild About Horror, because Mary Wild has got some things to say about Event Horizon.
Hey Mike, Mary Wild here. Happy to be back and share thoughts on one of my favorite sci-fi horror films, Paul Anderson's Event Horizon. Set in 2047, it follows a crew of astronauts sent on a rescue operation after a missing spaceship, the Event Horizon, spontaneously appears in orbit around Neptune. Upon boarding the ship, the rescue team finds evidence of a massacre. Searching for survivors, they experience apparitions of people from their past that only they can see, hallucinations corresponding to subjective fears and regrets. They eventually discover a video log of the ship's crew fucking and mutilating each other shortly after engaging the gravity drive. The video log ends with a shot of the spaceship's captain holding out his eyes gouged from their sockets, saying, "Liberate tutame ex inferis," in Latin translating to, "Save yourself from hell." Apparently, the lost spaceship was a test bed for an experimental engine that opened a rift in the space-time continuum and left our universe entirely, allowing a malevolent entity to possess the ship. The gravity drive opened a gateway to a hellish dimension, and now the Event Horizon has become sentient. In general relativity, an event horizon is a boundary in space-time beyond which events cannot affect the outside observer. In layman's terms, it is defined as the shell of points of no return. That is to say, the points at which the gravitational pull becomes so great as to make escape impossible even for light. An event horizon is most commonly associated with black holes. Light emitted from inside can never reach the outside observer. Likewise, any object approaching the horizon from the observer's side appears to slow down and never quite pass through the horizon, with its image becoming more and more redshifted as time elapses. This means that the wavelength is getting longer as the object moves away from the observer. Thinking about all of this, I can't help but interpret the film Event Horizon on the basis of the Freudian unconscious, which consists of veiled processes in the mind occurring automatically, including repressed impulses outside of empirical observation, subliminal perceptions, and habits. The unconscious is a source of dreams and a locus of implicit knowledge. Freud believed that significant psychic events take place below the surface, as if in a black hole of the conscious mind. In psychoanalysis, the unconscious is like a storage facility for socially unacceptable desires, traumatic memories, and painful emotions put out of the mind by repression. This view places the conscious self as an adversary to the unconscious, warring to keep inhibited material buried. The unconscious does not include all that is not conscious, but rather what is actively repressed from conscious thought, or what we don't want to know consciously. Unconscious thoughts are not directly accessible to ordinary introspection, but are interpreted via the methods of free association, jokes, slips of the tongue, dream analysis, and in modern times, through an examination of one's internet browser history. Unlike his medical contemporaries, Freud viewed dreams as valid psychic phenomena, wish fulfillments, requiring integration into waking mental acts. For him, dreams were the royal road to the unconscious. Because ego defenses are lowered when we sleep, repressed material comes to awareness, providing clues to how the unconscious mind operates. There's also a distinction to be made between manifest content, what the dreamer remembers and articulates, versus the latent content, which is the underlying symbolic meaning of the dream. The goal in psychoanalysis is to uncover buried psychic material, accessing our internal life via the aforementioned techniques to achieve clinical catharsis, an emotional release of some kind. Paul Anderson's film Event Horizon provides us with a wonderful topographical representation of how the unconscious operates and why it scares us so much. As a line from the movie goes, quote, "There are connections between the readings and the hallucinations, like they are all part of a defensive reaction of some kind of immune system. This ship is reacting to us, and the reactions are getting stronger. The ship brought back something with it, a life force of some kind. It's alive." End quote. The spaceship broke the threshold of the known universe and ventured into a dimension we cannot possibly comprehend. Out of this, it brought back what feels like a nightmare, a smorgasbord of everything we've worked hard to eliminate from consciousness, even adjusting itself to our own psyche, reflecting back to us bespoke, disturbing material from which we can't seem to escape. Miller sees a subordinate he was forced to abandon to his death. Peters sees her son with his legs covered in lesions. Ware sees an eyeless vision of his late wife, who committed suicide, urging him to join her. I see a link between Event Horizon and Andrei Tarkovsky's 1972 Russian sci-fi art film Solaris, an adaptation of the Polish author Lem's novel. It's the story of a psychologist, Chris Calvin, who's sent above Solaris, a planet with an oceanic surface that imitates recognizable forms. Scientists believe that Solaris is a gigantic brain that reads human minds. Soon after his arrival, Chris encounters his dead wife, Hari, who years ago on Earth killed herself after he abandoned her. All attempts to get rid of Hari fail. After he sends her into space with a rocket, she rematerializes the next day. Analysis of her tissue demonstrates that she's not composed of atoms like normal human beings. Beneath a certain micro-level, there is nothing, just void. Hari is not a person. She's an embodiment of Chris's innermost traumatic fantasies. Hari, this fragile spectral image, cannot ever be erased. She is undead, eternally recurring in the space between two deaths. Both Solaris and Event Horizon give us a useful illustration of how the unconscious functions. When a serious commitment has been made to self-reflect, we must accept that what we'll encounter will be terrifying in a very personalized way. I think that the orgiastic videolog message in which the Event Horizon captain warns, "Save yourself from hell," can be read as the ego's word of caution, precisely because the conscious personality's role is to suppress forbidden impulses. It is the captain of a ship navigating tumultuous waters. The leader of Event Horizon gouging his eyes out reminds me of the myth of Oedipus, who, realizing that he was not able to avoid the prophecy of killing his father and marrying his mother, is disgusted with himself and stabs his own eyes. The removal of the eyes is a refusal to see the truth of a tragic fate, and the people engaging deeply with their worst fears on that spaceship, of course, would also feel compelled to eradicate the frightening vision by digging out their eyes. However, as a faithful follower of Freud, I would give you the opposite advice to what the captain said. Don't bother saving yourself from hell, because you'll circle back to it anyway. No, stick around. Get real familiar with hell. Learn how to manage it. Let it make you stronger and wiser. The only way out is through. So, see you in hell.
A big thank you to the brilliant Mary Wilde. I love hearing Mary's interpretations of these movies. And don't forget, if you want to hear more from Mary Wilde, you can subscribe to her Patreon for regular bonus content and her brilliant insights. That's patreon.com/Mary Wilde. Okay, Becky, we're pretty much done, right? I mean, there's not too much more to say on Event Horizon. Is there anything we've forgotten to mention?
Have I talked about Sean Pertwee yet?
I love, and Jason Isaacs was pretty handsome in the 90s too.
Very handsome, yeah, and you know, like he's again like Sean Pertwee. Like that's their really sort of like wiry part of their career, and again, you can kind of that physicality like really sells this idea that they are like these kind of space workers. You know, they're sort of they're like up there in the thick of it. Like, as I say, they're like roughnecks, right? And, exactly. You know, that again, the sort of their physical attributes, they help sell it. Like, it's fine. Like they're sexy or whatever, but it does actually, you know, I am watching it for the plot, Mike, honest.
Oh, of course. We all are. Yeah, absolutely. If there's one thing you can say about the Event Horizon, it's all about the plot.
It's all about the plot. Yeah. What a film.
I love it. What a film. What a great double bill. I mean, I can't believe that it didn't come to me immediately that these two would make such a good double bill, because they really do. Actually,
they really do. And I mean, I guess maybe you did as well, but I literally double billed them, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah.
What a good time.
What an absolute treat. Well, there you go. I will finish by asking you, of course, the obvious question I've been asking everyone, and it might be one of the two films we've discussed tonight, but what's your favourite sci-fi horror movie?
I mean, it's Alien.
Yeah. Obviously. Are you very much team Alien over Aliens?
I am. And I mean, it's a virtually impossible question because they're both perfect movies. But if you add a knife to my throat, I think Alien is better. I'm on team Alien. Especially if the question is, now I know that Aliens has moments of like real terror and horror, and I do believe that it's a horror film. I do. But if the question is what's the best sci-fi horror, I think that Alien is more horror than Aliens. And so totally. I think especially it's not even necessarily like which one's the better film, it's which one's the better sci-fi horror film, and I think that is Alien. But it's also the better film. But I'm going to throw another one into the mix just because pretty much everybody has said Alien and it's not very interesting. And I'm going to say Akira.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Now, I'm a huge anime fan, and Akira is... no, it's not my favorite, but it's right up there. And I mean, that to me is a horror film, and it's as much a body horror film as any Cronenberg, and as much a body horror film as From Beyond or Event Horizon. And it's pure sci-fi. It's grounded, on Earth in the future, but it's got these moments of just like visceral horror to it. And I would say that, talking of hentai,
yes.
So it's Alien, but I'm gonna put Akira in there as my more interesting answer.
Oh, I love that. That's a great answer. Yeah, I actually did. A lot of people did mention to me during the body horror series that, I could have talked about Akira, which is so true. Maybe we'll have to discuss that on Patreon.
Yeah, we'll do a Patreon. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Amazing. Well, Becky, thank you so much. What an absolute joy it's been to discuss these movies. I've loved it. And just remind us where people can find you and more of your stuff out there online.
Yeah, thank you. This has just been what a joy. Thanks, mate.
What a joy.
Find me on Twitter. It's the best place, at Bunny Darke. And yeah, I'll just say that because I've got a link tree on there where everything else is. So yeah, find me on Twitter.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you once again to my brilliant guest, Becky Darke. Always such a pleasure. One of my favourite things to do is to sit and chat horror with Becky, so that was an absolute treat for me. So what do you think of this week's films, From Beyond and Event Horizon? As you can tell, me and Becky are huge fans of both. Do you agree or disagree with our takes? Please get in touch. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And if you want to discuss this week's episode with fellow listeners, join the discussion group. That's the Evolution of Horror discussion group, and you can find that on Facebook. You can find all previous seasons and episodes of this podcast on our website, evolutionofhorror.com. If you want to pick up an Evolution of Horror t-shirt or hoodie, then you can also find this on our website, evolutionofhorror.com/shop. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon and get weekly bonus episodes, this week we put out a bonus episode reviewing Halloween Kills in spoilerific detail, then you can find that on patreon.com/evolutionofhorror. You can find this podcast on all the major podcast platforms, and if you get a chance, I would be so grateful if you could spare a minute to leave us a little rating and review on Apple Podcasts, preferably a nice 5-star one, which really helps us get discovered by new listeners. So that's it for now. Join us next week as the alien and cosmic madness continues. Next week, I'm going to be joined by a friend of the pod, Matt Glasby, to discuss 2 movies about aliens disguising themselves as humans here on Earth. We're going to be discussing The Hidden from 1987 and John Carpenter's They Live from 1988. It's time to watch some great films and chew gum, and I'm all out of gum, or whatever that line is. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.